far as the mats are concerned, it was just the opposite. I needed to get these picked way in advance so they would dry enough so they'd be in a state where we can use them. I have a few different samples here of these mats, and before I begin talking about it, I was curious to find out, what did they use cattails for? What were the mats used for? And I was told that the woven mats that were made out of leaves of cattails were used for the mats they lined inside of the wigwams for bedding and sitting on. And you'll notice if you see some of the old pictures of old wigwams, they have these mats around the bottom part of it. They've got the logs on the bark on top, and then these mats lined up, and they're kind of like vertical lined mats that went all the way across. Like, well, what did they use? How did they make that? Someone told me, they used bulrush. They were called cattail mats, and I kept thinking, cattail mats. Well, they must have used those real thick, stiff parts of the cattail with the actual cattail on it, because how could they use the actual leaves? Those would just be all floppy. So in doing more research, they used both. They would use the thicker cattail stems with the cattails on them, taken off of course, on the ends of the mats, and maybe one or two in the middle. And in between, they would have either the bulrush grasses or the cattail leaves. So then when they take the mats off, they could just roll them up, because those the cattails sticks were so stiff, they formed a nice little brace to keep the piece all rolled up nicely and transportable and stuff. And they also, when they unrolled them, they were stiff enough to stay up against the wigwam, whereas these, I don't think would be stiff enough to stay up, and they wouldn't be as durable. So that's what I got out of the research I did. There's approximately 7-8 leaves on each of these stalks. And I picked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of them. And this was the size I got out of it. This piece was woven fresh. This was a tight weave. So this is how much they shrink. There's a lot of water in these because they're a water plant, right? So I was curious to find out how yellow is this going to get, and how dried up is it going to get. So the pictures I'm going to show you with the weaving is this actual piece. You'll see the difference between the tight weave and how loose it got. And I think what I can do is, this would be a really cool wall hanging, and like weaving other things in there and having little baubles and stuff hanging down. Wouldn't that be beautiful? So it stayed pretty green too, and I think it stayed green because I kept it indoors. The ones that I dried out in front of you were always outside, but in the shade. But there's always some UV rays that will get in somewhere. So they did lose some of their greenness to them, but I was curious to find out how yellow they were going to get in the week that I dried those. So these ones I picked like 3 weeks ago. So you'll notice how tight everything is and how loose it got. That's how much dryness happens. Probably, what do you think, 50%? So these are the ones in front of you. This is what I picked over at my auntie's house over by Legend Lake area. She had tons of them. She said, go ahead, get rid of them. I could have probably picked all day, but it was hot, and I bunched them up into like 8 or 9 pieces. I figured, okay, we got like 15 students maximum. I better make sure we all have enough to make, at least a small piece. So I figured this is how many I had. So I'm pretty sure there will be enough to go around. So I picked them, I peeled them, I cut off the bottoms before I started peeling. The other time I just peeled them with the bottoms on, and that's where you get a loopy. So maybe we can just cut off the bottoms in the beginning. So there's all the bottoms, and there's all the tops. It's just so beautiful, the colors, huh? And it's then laid out to dry. They suggest putting them on something like a screen so the air can get underneath. All I had was a tarp, and I knew I didn't have a permanent place to store them because this was out at my auntie's. And she didn't have a screen for one thing, but I also didn't have anything to cover them if I was going to keep them outside, like a lean-to or something. So I had to keep them on a target. I had to keep, drying them out for the day, bring them back into the garage because it's going to rain, bring them back out during the day, flip them, constantly flipping them and trying. So some of them got moldy because they were laying on their feet for too long. You'll see a little bit of black spots here and there. But it was quite the process.
Did you take the ends of them and take and tie them over like a rafter or something?
Yep, you can do that.
Yeah,
thank you for mentioning that. I did see some pictures, old pictures of some Indian women with the actual full plant tied them, and they had them on rafters. A whole bunch of them, and it looked more like an outside lean-to because you could see the four corners of the wooden structure, and then they had it covered with bark and stuff, and then they just had them all laying or hanging there, which is nice because it keeps them straight. The air flows through them nicely, and tying them up one at a time as a leaf would take forever. So it makes sense that they just took the whole plant and tied them up and let them all hang. I went out and I went to the Cattail harvesting area. This one I believe is out over where that what is that called? That place that we're on Old South Branch Road, Tomals Bay. I think that's where that was. I also found a really nice bunch of them over at my auntie's over by the Legendary Lodge, which is where we're going to go to harvest some in a little bit. But these are the cattails, of course, with the thicker stems, and then all the greens around it are the leaves, and that's what we're going to be harvesting. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the quick process, because what I like to do when I learn is to see the whole thing before I actually begin doing it. So I want to educate you guys a little bit on the actual process and what I did. So what I did to make my sample here, I grabbed some stalks of leaves, and I knew they had to be separated. There's some real gooey stuff on the bottom up here, and from what I understand, back in the day, they used to use that gooiness as like an ointment or like an antiseptic. They put it on burns or bites, and it's really gooey. So when we go on pick, we're going to be using gloves because it's kind of raw, it gets all over your hands. So that's what the leaves look like, the stalks look like. There's no root on them. Pulling the root out is really, really difficult, and I'm not sure whether some of the areas that they have cattails that they're trying to keep the cattail population there, so I didn't want to remove plants anyway. So that's why you don't see the roots, but you want to avoid that, okay? So be gentle with them by grabbing down here further, and that's the root. There's where that slime is.
Oh yeah.
And then you want to just gently pull up.
They're a lot bigger than
the root.
So the root is actually edible.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
They actually boil it. They can boil it and make some.
And the front of it was like latex, so
Yeah.
almost like easier pitch to work with.
Right, and not only that, but I heard like ointment and stuff for burns and scratches. And this goes all the way through, so when you're pulling it off, it's going to be all over. So you'll notice the first outside leaf has that dip where it comes out, or that little comes out further. That helps it hold onto the whole stalk. So what I did was I cut like maybe 2 inches down. You're not going to be able to use this fatter part of it because it's so gooey and wide. It doesn't match the rest of this long blade, so we're not going to use it anyway. So even if you want to cut right up to that, but I found that when you go in further, some of these leaves have some nice usefulness to them as far as, you know, if you cut right here, you're still going to have some gooiness and some fatness on the inside ones, all right? So either cut right at the fat or you can cut down a little bit. If you want to go up a little further, you can, but you're getting rid of some of this nice leaf here. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So just cut it off and your leaves will fall apart, or you can pull them apart. So I lined them up, started peeling them, separating them, and this is what I got out of them. The larger ones are on the outside of the plant, and as you peel away, they get smaller and smaller. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sizes I got, which is pretty cool, the number 7, you know. I just think that was a really neat thing, that there was 7 sizes. I ended up using the 1, 2, I think 3. I may have gotten into the 4 size, but they were getting kind of small to work with. And then the rest of them I ended up just throwing back in the woods. So you won't be using all of these because these ones are really kind of small and they're really wet and flimsy. So you'll notice that when you peel yours, what that's like. So we'll probably only end up using the first 3 or 4 sizes.
Yes.
And then I got the 3rd, that's getting really short. And then the shortest side is really, really short. So if I were to use all of these, I would want to cut my stalks off to the shortest size. So I would be losing a lot of leaf up here, right? Yeah. Because I'd be using this one as the measurement. So I don't think I'm even going to use that one. I'm going to go ahead and use these. Oh, that's even cutting a lot off, isn't it?
But if you make it rectangular, then
You might want to use the long
some would
ones.
be longer, obviously goes one way, and
Right.
shorter ones.
So you can either take all of them and cut them all the same length, or just take each size and cut off the tips using the shortest one. And then this you would take and you would measure it so it's about half by not bending it too much because you don't know where half is. And then cutting that. And then you've got double the number of pieces to start your weaving. All the same size. And then do that with all your other ones. Like I said, if you want the same size all the way around, then use your shortest stalk and cut off the rest. I sorted by size. So don't, it's really
Your sadder. These are real.